So today is the 6th of June, and it has passed 80 years since the Normandy landings in 1944. And normally I wouldn't remember this date unless, of course, the mainstream media would remind me like it is doing now. And the words, the kind of words they use to describe the event, it's like the event that changed our lives forever. That one thing that if it hadn't happened, nothing would be like it is now. Germany would not have been defeated. Okay, they didn't say that, but it sure does seem so for a newcomer, and I mean a newcomer to this world that listens to this for the first time. He hasn't studied his history, and I'm not condemning, he might have other interests in life, although I think history is crucial to learn. The world doesn't start with you. So he listens to this and he thinks, wow, these were the saviors, thanks to the United States, Canada, Britain, and la la la. We live in such a beautiful and free society now. And this, for me, is it's a kind of, it's almost, to some people it is, but it's kind of a lack of respect. It represents a lack of respect. And it represents the temptation of dominant powers to rewrite history. Because if you don't need to be an historian, you don't need to be a deep researcher, you only need to read a few things. Even in the history books that I used in my schooling here in the West, you soon realize that the big burden was carried by the Soviets. They were the ones who defeated Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany was a well-oiled machine in the beginning. It had some innovative, it had a very competent officer corps, even pre-war time. Traditional from the Prussian school of war. They were like open-minded people like Erich von Manstein and Guderian, Erwin Rommel, and others. And the one thing that these German generals did not have in common was they were not Nazis. Sometimes they were also enthusiasts before the war of this leader. They believed in him, but soon when they saw him conducting the war, and if you read their memories, they are heavy critics to the little man with the mustache. And so this well-oiled machine rolled through the Soviet Union with an army of millions. If I recall well, it was about the overall participation in the invasion was about 3 million people. It was a huge army. And the Soviets were rolled back to the doors of each one of their capital cities, being Leningrad, Moscow, and Stalingrad, over a front line of 6,000 kilometers wide. This was some deed, and they did put the Soviet forces in check. They did. Despite the Soviet victory, the Soviet paid the price of of 27, estimate 27 million people. 27 million. Let that number sink in if you haven't heard it before. It's funny that nowadays the anti-communist propaganda, anti-communists, you know, very basic anti-communist propaganda, they like to include this number in the deaths caused by communism. You see, and if they have the need to do so, it kind of reveals the sort of propaganda and the sort of people these guys are. Not saying it was all roses, but you know. And so, and if you dig a little bit more into this history, you will know that not only the Soviets took the big weight, they carried the heavy weight to victory with a lot of human loss, but they also, Stalin also, in those meetings he had with the Western leaders, he also urged them to open a new front sooner. Because nowadays there are some people who feel also the temptation, these people who are indoctrinated with anti-Russian rhetoric and anti-communist rhetoric. They confuse a lot of concepts, and they get tempted to say that the Soviets would have rolled until France, right? They would have conquered France if the landings of 6th of June were not made. Yeah, and this is something that I'm talking about in order to straighten this up. I mean, it's not difficult to find the information, right? It's not even hidden. You just have to not just paying attention to the mainstream media only. You gotta read some more. You gotta go through some more information. If you are listening to me, you have to go and listen maybe to those not very intelligent anti-communist people, although they are very biased. Listen to all. Try to draw your own conclusions. I know it's always a difficult thing to do, to sort out information. Everyone who tries to do it struggles with it, and we often fall for mistakes. But this one is I think it's a huge mistake to think that the Allied landings on Normandy beaches were like the salvation of the world. Germany was already was already on her knees. They were unable to stop the Russians. They were being decimated. In 1944, they had huge defeats in the Western Front. Fucking support for mobile phones keeps falling. And so the point is that they were already defeated. It was just a matter of time. The Germans were only fighting because of stubbornness and they had still a solid regime working until the very end. You know, there were also attempts to kill Hitler, to make to sign a surrender agreement earlier, but that such was not possible. And when I'm going to divert a little bit from the 6th of June, just a curiosity. When you read through the memories of, for example, I read the memories of Erich von Manstein and Heinz Guderian. I read not only the doctrine book from the Blitzkrieg, called the Blitzkrieg, but also his memories. And both of them had theories of how to contain the Russians and of or how to contain the landings. I didn't read any memories of Rommel because he didn't get to write them. Although he has a good book on the First World War, on his participation in the First World War, called, if I'm not mistaken, Infantry Attacks. It's a rather interesting book. You could see the kind of man he was when he was leading company level size. Anyway, so if you read this general's memories, you will see that they had a lot of possible theoretical solutions that would avoid Germany disaster, but that doesn't really matter because the core of the German government, the NAZIs and the guy with the little mustache, he surrounded himself with the worst of them. So, you have Hermann Göring, who was addicted to morphine, and he surrounded himself with the worst of them, and so it led to what it led. And I guess it was better that way. I'm not sure, but I guess it was better to the bitter end. I'm still surprised how people nowadays want to revive it. And I also blame the Western democracies for the revival of the NAZIs. I mean, look at the European Union. There are NAZIs all over, starting with the low-cost version of Evil on Earth, Miss von der Leyen. And they seem to get along very well with the extreme right. So, don't fall for this 6th of June bullshit. Also, the history tells that... Shit. I think this is gonna fall. History... I'm having a bit of trouble here, I'm sorry. So, history tells that... if you read this general's memories, that even this landing could be easily avoided, even with Germany weak as it was. It was not a very smart operation. It was the bigger operation of its kind. It was good. Let me say, it was good to make Hollywood movies. It was that kind of operation. I mean, if you just land masses of human flesh on the beaches, against bullets, machine gun bullets, it's like a World War I charge, right? It's even worse because you got the guys on the high ground with the machine guns, and you have the soldiers without any cover on the beaches. I mean, it's a perfect slaughter. That's what it was. And they make it, of course, they glorify it a lot. I'm not going to go into the details, although I did read a lot of this history and a lot of the military part of it. But how many troops were involved? 156,000, 160,000, about that. Yeah. Of course, dozens of thousands died on those beaches. The beaches, if I recall, was Omaha, Juneau, and Sword. Gold, Juneau, Sword, Utah, and Omaha. Thing. Remind me if write on the comments if I forgot any of those. So if you compare that with the millions fallen on the Russian front, you see where the war was decided. I mean, you had the Americans and the English and the British in the North Africa. I mean, that was nothing compared with the Russian front. Nothing. So please, whenever you hear anti-Russian rhetoric and anti-Soviet rhetoric, and you hear cherry-picked bad episodes and often badly told, highly inaccurate, highly biased, think again. Those are the ones who are responsible for the way of life you have now. So I really hope I see you on the next one.